The comments heard on The View from a Pew are those of Mac McCoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View from a Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View from a Pew.
Good afternoon and good evening. My name is Mac McCoy, along with my co-host Steve Arndt, and this is The View from a Pew. It is the 13th day of January in the Lord's year 2026. We put that date on there because with the internet and streaming and clouds, you could be listening or watching this years from now. The question, of course, will what we talk about today be relevant? Well, if the Antichrist has not returned, then it's very relevant. If he has returned, I doubt if the internet will even exist. But we're going to have some fun. And this is going to be a two-part program, or is it more?
I think two will cover it.
Okay, two-part program. We'll do the first part today and then the second part next week. And so let's start like we always do. What is the word of the day today, Steve?
Apostasy.
Apostasy. Is that something you get at a good Italian restaurant?
No, it's something that isn't available at Walmart either. It's the complete abandonment or departure from one's faith or religion. So the Antichrist is said to lead a great apostasy.
So does that mean that the Antichrist has no religion, or he does have one, and we're going to talk about what that might be today?
Yes, it does mean yes.
I love it when people answer yes.
Well, it's you'll be surprised the religion he has, and yet you won't be surprised. That's why I hesitate.
Yeah, and I want to mention that this program, even though Steve and I are doing it together, Steve is really the producer on this program, which means he does all the research and comes up with this, and he doesn't okay it with me. This is his show. He's really the star of the show, but he does give me a nice overview, bullet points, which I have to tell you is better than I get from anybody else, so I appreciate you very much. All right, so let's start with the definition of the Antichrist.
Well, just like the name says, it's a meaning in Christian theology that's against Christ. So he opposes Jesus. He opposes the idea of a second coming as a deceptive world leader. He's often referred to, and I'm talking about the Antichrist, as the beast in Revelation.
Yes.
Offering.
I don't think is the term Antichrist in the Bible?
I don't think it's done. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it's our way of summing it up, because in English, against somebody is you're Antichrist.
And would you say, and this is not a rhetorical question, I don't know the answer to this, would you say that the Antichrist is not Satan, but is certainly working for the same side? Or could the Antichrist be Satan himself, who comes back as a human being or a spirit or whatever he is?
Well, since you seem to like this answer, I will say it again. Yes. And did you say definitively is an impossibility? But I would think, the way I see it, we will have forerunners of the Antichrist, which we'll get into another session.
Okay.
But and by the way, there will be 3 sessions. I misspoke.
3, okay.
Yeah, I misspoke. But and if I keep talking, maybe 4. But basically, what we're talking about here is always somebody that is going to be really dark, but he won't come across that way, and he's going to be offering peace, but demanding worship, persecuting believers before being defeated by Christ, because ultimately Christ will win. And so anybody that denies the incarnation, as described by the apostles, and any opposition at all can be called an Antichrist. But we're talking about the Antichrist, the one that comes down and says, man, I'm taking over. And he's going to be given a pretty good reign as far as having the opportunity to try.
Okay. All right. So you've also quoted in here in your research a bishop which spent most of his life studying the Antichrist. Give us a little background on this fellow, would you?
Well, I brought this bat along in case you wouldn't be receptive to my conversation here, and I thought it'd be in a submission. But short of that, what this is a reminder of, did you ever play baseball or
Yeah,
baseball,
sure.
softball?
As a kid, I did. Yeah.
Well, I could run pretty good, but I couldn't hit, catch, or throw that well. I don't know why. Nobody chose me. Anyway, people can be so picky. But anyhow, despite that, Fulton J. Sheen, I have no idea if he was a ball player, but he's a heavy, heavy hitter. And in this subject, there is nobody better qualified, better versed than him. There is nobody. Now, he happened to be a Roman Catholic bishop, and I personally listened to him when I was very young on black and white TV. I remember that because my folks turned it on. And you know what? He
Yeah,
would.
'cause I recognize the name.
Oh,
Bishop Sheen.
yeah, he was born, or actually, he was ordained in 1919, and he was consecrated bishop in 1951. He published 66 books during his time as a priest. Think of that.
Now, you know what's interesting about that? And it's probably just a coincidence, or maybe it's not.
I know
How
what
many
you're going to
books are
say.
in the Bible?
666. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It is interesting. He did that during his time as a priest, college professor, and television personality. And I remember watching him, and there was not a better speaker around, none. And he would just make you want to rise up and do something, kind of like you do with me, just inspire me. And I would I just always felt after watching that, like, wow, it was beyond a movie, it was beyond an exercise, it was just wisdom.
Yeah, he hosted a show called Life is Worth Living, and he won an Emmy, so that's a pretty big deal, for most outstanding television personality, and he was featured on the cover of Time magazine.
Yes, and the thing about it too, he had another program called the Fulton Sheen program, much like Life is Worth Living. But if you take those times, 61 to 68, 51 to 67, 6 plus 7, 8, 6, 14 years roughly that he was on the air every week. Now that's an incredible feat for anybody.
But he gave his first presentation in his 60 years of a priesthood. He gave his first in actually 1947.
Now, what's important about that? Last week we talked about Paul Harvey and the rest of the
Yep.
story, and If I Was the Devil, and he had broadcast that in 1965. And I dare say that some of his ideas probably came from Bishop Sheen. I'm serious.
Okay, Paul Harvey.
Yeah, no doubt, because this guy is the foundation on this. I mean, this is where you go. And as you mentioned, his first presentation, and go ahead with, you probably have a question.
Well, I guess I wanted to know, how did he introduce the subject? I'm sure the fact that he was a Catholic bishop of that esteem was important for us as the audience. But how did he first give us, especially in radio, the presentation on the first Antichrist?
Well, yes, he was dynamic in person, but his voice, much like Paul Harvey's, was dynamic also.
And that's how he introduced the subject, a lot with the dynamics of his voice.
Well, I saw him on TV, okay? And he was in full attire. He knew how to
Yep.
present himself. And he was excellent that way. He always had a blackboard that he would write things on. So he'd be drawing you in on every element. He was very mobile. And then in between, somebody else would erase it for him. And he'd even acknowledge that because everything was a flowing. He caught your attention.
Now, I'm going to put up a picture of him. So for those of you watching this, you can kind of see, and I bet you'll recognize that face, because that's the face that I was going to say that's the face he used on television. Well, of course it was, but that's how he looked. And I would encourage you to maybe Google him and take a look at some of the pictures of him, because growing up in the 50s and 60s, that is a face I remember.
Now, first presentation was on the radio in 1947. So just think about the timing of this. It's right after World War II. And I don't think that's an accident because what he was seeing was dynamic change and he was predicting, basically, he was prophesizing here. And I mean, best way I can say it. But he's doing it in a way of wisdom in the sense of using his mind and his ability to think clearly and to discern. And so how did he introduce the subject? It was amazing because he said there's a signs of the times point to two inescapable truths. Think of that. Time of the signs of the time point to two inescapable truths. Now this is a long answer in a way we go about it, but the first inescapable truth is we have come to the end of post-Renaissance chapter of history, which made man made man the measure of all things. In other words, man was important. And he said that there were three dogmas of the modern world that are dissolving before our eyes.
Three dogmas. Now, define dogma. That's something that man creates within religion, right?
Well, or it can be also, a dogma can be man's law in anything, not just religion.
Okay.
I mean, I think you could take it outside that, but basically, let's say economically, basically is what is man? Okay, what do we believe? Well, one of the first ones that he said is we are witnessing the liquidation of economic man, or
He said that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or the assumption that man serves no function other than produce and acquire wealth, grow old, and die. Now, this refers to the end of a specific, narrow, and dehumanizing view of human existence that arose from unchecked industrial capitalization and was taken to its logical extreme by communism. That's what he actually believed.
Now, I just want to mention this. Today, the 13th day of January, is the day in history that the Supreme Court of the United States is going to talk about whether men who transition, in this day and time, we would call them a transition to a woman, and then decided they could compete against women in sports. So it's kind of interesting we should be talking about this bishop whose first question is, well, what is a man?
Yeah, and he's not really questioning what the man is. He's just saying that the world is changing the perception of what the man is, and that's the problem. That's one of the signs of our times. That is a truth of what's happening, and it's unbelievable.
And he was saying this 50, 60, 76, 79 years ago.
Long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned this communism.
Notice how quick I did that math in my head.
Yeah, and I think it might have been accurate, but I wouldn't trust it if I were you. Listeners, you should have your calculators with you. So, but this capitalism is real interesting. He criticized monopolistic capitalism for treating labor as a commodity and separating ownership from responsibility, which he argued resulted in the depersonalization of man.
Okay, hold
That's
on.
pretty heavy stuff here.
Yeah, that you got to slow down. Talk to me like I'm an 8-year-old. First of all, what is monopolistic capitalism? So mono means one, right?
Yeah, in other words, a very tightly controlled, one-way type capitalism.
Okay.
In other words, not what we really experience as much today, but at one time in our, well, it's really, what he's saying is that if we treat people like they're not people, they're going to become less than people. It's going to dehumanize them.
Okay.
Once they're dehumanized, they're going to be treated worse, not better, because who are they? They're just pieces on a.
Yeah, I like the way he put this. Treating labor as a commodity and separating ownership from responsibility, which he then argued resulted in depersonalization of a man or a human.
Yeah, and then he argued that
Let's not get gender mixed
yeah,
up.
we're talking generic here.
Yeah.
So he argued that communism simply took this capitalist error, let's just assume it is an error, and intensified it, making the economic the unique end of man. So, in other words, he argues that if you take the extremes of either one, they're both godless, in that they place economics above the moral, spiritual order.
Okay, good. I was glad. I was waiting for you to define that for me because I didn't get it till then.
It's
He
complicated.
argued that both systems, both communism and capitalism, right, were godless in that they placed economics above the moral, spiritual order. In other words, he was saying we idolized capitalism and communism more than we idolized our creator.
Yeah, in one case, it's the end result to control the money. In communism, it's the ideology, and really, it's ideology in both cases. And I need to stress this. So this we're talking about radical. We're talking about radical in both cases. Now, most communism, by its very definition, if not all, is radical. Okay, so communism is radical because it totally diminishes man's personality, a person worth, whereas normally in our type of government here, we try to recognize the individual's worth. But if you take capitalism to the extreme, if you have one company, we talked about monolithic monopoly. If you have monopoly in any one area, then you can indeed have a communist type effect, total control, right?
And I think a good example, tell me if this would be a good example of this. Even though this started at the turn of the century, here we are 100 and some years later, still looking at automobile dealer manufacturers. So Henry Ford, the guy that invented the Buick, the guy that invented the Chevrolet, the Cadillac, those were really idols, right, in the automotive industry of capitalism.
I think a better example, or maybe let's put it this way. Let's say that Henry Ford, and Henry Ford, he really, if the truth was known, when he gave them a lot of money, but he also had a company store, and they had to basically buy everything there because they had to live there,
Right.
and he took the money back. He was really controlling of that. Now, I would take another example, maybe more relevant, is Rockefeller and oil,
Okay.
Standard and all that. If the government hadn't stepped in, there'd be one source for our gasoline today. I mean,
Would
see
have
what
been Standard Oil.
yeah. If the government hadn't stood in, we would have all these government lands being exploited. National parks wouldn't exist. Okay, so even though I'm a very strong person as far as for promoting independence and having,
You're a capitalist.
yeah, I am a capitalist, but I think capitalism unbridled is not good. In other words, there's got to be some control on things.
Well, and by the way, you're listening to The View from a Pew. My name's Mac McCoy. Steve Arntz is my co-host on this. And the title of this series, and we'll have 3 programs on this, is What Religion Will the Antichrist Be? But first, in this first session, we are describing who the Antichrist is based on definition, and that definition is both, I guess can it be both theology and, that's kind of really have to have theology. You don't find the Antichrist outside of theology, right?
Well, it's in theology, but it's going to be demonstrated in philosophy. It'll be demonstrated in economics. It'll be demonstrated. It'll permeate everything.
Well, okay. So let's define godless.
That's a good question.
The cornerstone of the Antichrist is godless.
Now, godless
Or is he or she the God?
Well, let me answer the first question, and then that's a separate question. What Bishop Sheen is meaning is that the modern world at that time, he's talking about the modern world, 1947 and on, has reduced the human being to a mere cog in a machine.
Okay.
As a producer and consumer whose sole purpose is, again, to acquire wealth, grow old, and die, rather than to fulfill a divine spiritual purpose. That's a big difference Big difference.
Yes.
Okay. So if we say, why does man exist? He exists to produce all this stuff for us, and goodbye. You outwork. You're dead now to us because you can't work anymore. You see what I mean? It's like you're useless now,
Okay.
which isn't good.
So let me see if this makes sense to you. I would tell you that I was the first, a producer and consumer, and whose sole purpose was to acquire wealth and grow old and die. Then, when Jesus came into my life, I became a full divine spirit. I have a full divine spiritual purpose. I
Yeah.
no longer care about money, what I drive, the house I live in. I don't care about those things that we idolize.
Well, since Mac made himself a dartboard, I don't mind throwing some darts, and I applaud you for using you as an example because I think that really is typical of what happens, and yet, well, he's a good guy. He's making money. He's employing people, and if he gets, and he's just doing so much good. But if his sole purpose is not to help his employees, doesn't give a rat's ass about anything but what goes in his pocket, you can see how these people over time, I'm talking about employees or whatever, over time could be depersonalized,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. When you put it that way, I am blessed to tell you that I always cared about my people because most of the time in broadcast, well, not most of the time, all of the time in broadcasting, people were your product.
And I got
If you didn't care about their family and what they thought, then you didn't have a good TV station or radio station.
one of our earlier broadcasts, but I know we talked about this, is you can be moral and ethical without being Christian. And so, you were fortunate that you were. But he's just trying to paint the picture. Now, this is really a very long, he's very deep on this. And that's why I have to, that's why I have to explain this in some depth, because that first dogma makes zero sense when you first hear it. You cannot. I studied it, and I thought, what in the world is this scene? So I had to start reading more and more to get to the basis of that, to understand it. It's very complicated. Now, I want to go into this second dogma. He says, we are witnessing the liquidation of the idea of the natural goodness of man. There is no need for God to give man rights or to free him from his guilt because progress is automatic. Thanks to science, education, evolution, which will in one day make man a king of God, a kind of God. I said not king God, a kind of God. And then just think of right now with the AI. Think of that. Yeah. It's just the robots, all this stuff, and this even back then in '47, he's saying this already. Wasn't he on target?
Yeah.
Wasn't he on target?
He was Orwellian. Isn't that the term?
That's right. He's Orwellian. That's a really big word for you. I applaud you. I need to make note of that. I'll never use that word because you know it already. So then the third dogma is this: liquidation of rationalism. Well, that is a heavy one. Think of what that means.
Liquidation of rationalism. So you get rid of being rational.
Yeah, it's the idea that the purpose of human reason is not to discover the meaning and goal of life. Think of that. Namely, the salvation of a soul, but to devise new technical advances to make this earth a city of man to replace the city of God.
Boy, we are living in that.
We are there. We are there. AI. To make this earth a city of God. Wow. Yeah.
Although, now, just time out for a second. I have seen some wonderful things done with AI for to mix into our theology. For those of you that want to look this up, childlikemedia.com or .org is a company out in California who is starting to make faith-based AI videos of creation, of Noah's Ark, of David and Goliath, and telling the stories without a human playing the role, but a human invented by artificial intelligence.
You would like cartoons. Now, the thing about that, too, is, I mean, it's easy to see.
Yeah.
It's good for kids, 8-year-olds. You keep saying about 8 year.
Talk to me
So,
like I'm 8 years
so
old.
I'm just appealing to that.
Yeah.
And so the point is that, like anything, it can be good or bad. You can use it favorably or non-favorably. So you can use it in a Christian way, moral way, or you can use it in an immoral way.
Yeah, if you get a chance, go to, not right now, but go to Childlike Media. That's one word. No, I'm sorry, Childlike Media. And I believe it's .com, maybe it's .org. And one of the first things they created was a 2-minute video. That's not the right term anymore, but a 2-minute video of the beginning of creation till the end of mankind and Jesus returns.
Wow.
And have you ever watched this? It's incredible. And if you're like me and you and we have an idea about what the Bible story is there, you'll see the characters pop up, but they're only up for like a second, if that.
I can't remember the details. I should, but there's a new attraction at in Silver Dollar, not Silver Dollar City, but the Ozarks there. The Branson, and it sounds really good. It's done for kids to be able to understand, but adults love it too. And it goes through the history of the Bible and everything, and it's supposed to be very good. I want to add one other thing though. This is pretty heavy duty too. He says that this time that we're in now, the transitional era in history. Wow, this is just really heavy. He said, it may well be that the historical liberalism of our modern generations, think of that. He's using the word liberalism.
Which is a big, important word right now.
Well, it is because you think anyway, so he says, of our modern generations is only a transitional era in history between a civilization that was once Christian to one that will be definitely be anti-Christian, not antichrist. So he's saying, right now we're in that time going from one that was Christian, a civilization, to one that will be anti-Christian. Think of that we're in between.
And he said this in 1947.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this
Incredible.
heavy-duty stuff here. And so, go on.
No, I agree with you. It may very well be the time that the liberal part of our society, and this is not meant as a negative, this is meant as an observation. According to Bishop Sheen, that the liberalism of our today's generations is a transitional area between civilization that was once focused on Christ or religion of some kind to one that will definitely be anti-religion and anti-Christ.
Yeah, I would stress anti-Christian more than anything, because it's going to be for something, but it isn't going to be for Christ.
Well, didn't you say there were really two inescapable truths?
Yeah, this is why this is such a multifaceted answer, because we've talked only about one of the truths, then we talked about 3 significant dogmas, and now we're going to go to the second truth, and that is that we are definitely this is going to blow your mind. It's going to blow your mind. We are definitely at the end of a non-religious era of civilization. Now, we just said it was going to go Christian and anti-Christian, and now he's coming back and say it's the end of a non-religious era of civilization. Now, this is really deep.
Now, and again, this is Bishop Sheen.
Yeah, this is Bishop.
40s, 50s, and 60s.
Yeah. So he says this is where religion is right now, what we've been in before, where we're at that time, is where religion is treated as an addendum to life, a pious extra, a morale builder for the individual, but really of no social relevance, and God as a silent partner whose name was used, going back, by the firm, talking about companies, to give respectability, but God had nothing to say about how the business should be run. Think about that. And out of that comes our problems with ethics.
Yeah. Hold on just a second.
It's heavy.
I just want to think about that for a minute. We are coming through an era that God is a silent partner whose name was used by a company to give respectability, but God had nothing to say about the way the business
Organizations,
was run.
individuals. You could have people walking around using Christ this, Christ that, and those same people would use his name in vain.
When you were researching this, Steve, did you realize that we're living in that today? And I
Oh,
don't mean today as in the 21st century. I mean today as the 13th of April in
what,
2026.
that's what makes this guy such a heavy hitter.
Yeah,
This guy was way ahead of his time,
yeah.
seeing stuff that, he could have been an Einstein in science. You know what I mean? But the point is, everything he's said so far is coming out exactly that way.
God has nothing to say about how business should be run.
Yeah, they're going to say something. They might even pray before the meeting, but it doesn't mean anything. It's all show. A lot of it is. I shouldn't say not all of it, but a lot of it is.
Yeah.
Think of the time when we had prayer in school, and not to say we weren't religious, but we were going through a time where we just had a quick go through this. It's kind of like Pledge of Allegiance. We just went through it quick,
Yeah.
didn't really necessarily mean it, didn't think too much about it.
Okay, let me ask you this. This just flashed through my mind. Is that another way of saying that there's no spiritual or Christian fruit present in the process?
Well,
Big, sorry.
no, it's back to the Bible. It's back to the wheat being separated, the weeds of the grain. So no, the fruit will always be here as well as the distractors,
Well,
both.
And somebody's not going to like that I'm about to say this, but I believe that's one of the issues. No, let me back up. This is one of the issues I have with the current administration in the United States, that there seems to be a God present and an appreciation for the Creator, but there's very little fruit.
Well, and it could be too that we're looking for the wrong kind of fruit. We don't. This is that's a very volatile question.
Okay, well, I just
Yeah,
threw it out there.
yeah. So let's go on.
Well, what did the good bishop say that the next era will be? That the era that we're in, well, we're not in it yet, are we? We're coming up to it. This is the beginning of what he's talked about. That would be at when he was telling us this. We're talking 70 years ago. We're talking another century.
Actually, I think we're right about to enter this new era if we haven't.
All right.
And it's scary because it's going to look radically different, and yet it's going to look really good
To who?
to us. It's going to be really easy to be deceived. The new era we are about to enter, and I'm using his words. That's why you don't see my eyes leaving the text as much as sometimes, because I want to get the wording right.
Yeah.
Because his wording is definitive as to what he's trying to say. Might be called the religious phase of human history. Now, this is not what we think of religious. I want to be clear about this. This will not be religion in the traditional sense.
And let me put a Mac phrase in there. Because if somebody asks me if I'm religious, I answer them no. That's the wrong R. I'm in a relationship with my Creator. Okay? I worship my Creator not because of a religion, but because of my relationship with them.
Now, as strange as this may sound, that could even make you more susceptible to this.
Okay?
So, what kind of religion will it be?
What kind of religion will it be?
What do you think? I mean,
what did the bishop say it would be?
Well, he says the indifference to the absolute, which characterized the liberal phase of civilization. Do we understand that? The indifference. We don't care what history did. We don't care what civilizations did before. We don't care. We can't say that experience means that much. We can't say that was wisdom then, but not now, right? Everything's relative. You ever hear that word, expression? It's relative. Well, was that the wrong thing? It's relative. When he was in the foxhole, it's relative. It depends. And there's no absolutes. So now, that characterized the liberal phase of civilization. It's going to be followed by a passion for the absolute. Now think of that. Passion. So now that sounds pretty good. If you're a Christian, you want to have absolutes, right?
Yeah.
But what kind of absolutes?
Absolute.
So they're going
Yes, I as a Christian have absolutes.
Right. The struggle that we will be going through is not going to be for colonies national rights, but for the souls of men. This is really baseline here.
Okay.
The battle lines are clearly being drawn, even back then. The basic issues are no longer in doubt. From now on, men will divide themselves into two religions, only two, understood again as a surrender to an absolute.
You know, and again, you and I don't talk about this stuff before you walk in here, and I don't help you write this script. But I have Macisms. I have them on a business card. If you go to my website, which is muggedbyjesus.com, there's a several-minute video that has all of my Macisms on there. And here's my latest one now, Steve. I don't know if you realize this, but you just said the basic issues are no longer in doubt. My latest Macism is certainty is the enemy of doubt.
Yes,
Certainty.
yes. There's another way of looking at that. I think I came up with this just in thinking, but if you don't leave some room for doubt, you don't leave enough room for Jesus to work.
Right.
In other words, how can you ever ask for help if you don't have any doubts about anything? If you think you have all the answers, how would you ever approach anybody for help?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and I got that line from a movie that came out last year, which I really enjoyed, called The Conclave. Did you see that?
I have not.
At the beginning of the conclave, the bishop has just passed. And so all the cardinals are gathered into Rome, and they're going to vote on a new bishop. I'm sorry,
Pope.
a new pope. And one of the guys that was involved in this process did not want to be considered for the role of the pope. The other guy involved in this said, "But you're the right guy." And he said, "I'm not certain." And that's when he said this line, "Certainty is the enemy of doubt." Because for the new pope to be elected by the cardinals, it had to be 100%. There could be no doubt. It wasn't a majority vote. It was 100%. No doubt.
Did you know that the present pope was getting ready to retire?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. Before he
Got sick.
No. He's not sick.
Oh, that's right. He retired.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the present.
Yeah, right.
Leo.
Yeah.
Pope Leo was actually thinking, get ready to retire, and then he said yes to Jesus, saying, he felt that he was called to do something more. He didn't go in to become pope; he was chosen. Okay, but
Right.
he set aside retirement in his own mind and said yes again.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how that can be. So yes, what's really interesting, if you're going to completely dedicate yourself to a given purpose, ideologically and everything. Wow.
And it's going to be to surrender to an absolute, no doubt.
No doubt well,
Tell me what that means, absolute.
absolute means that there's no doubt. Well, it not only means there's no doubt, it means more of a no fuzziness, no relative to this. It's the opposite of liberalism. Everybody's accountable. You need to do this to do this. It sounds good. It sounds like Christianity. I mean, it sounds like that'll be a good thing, right?
Well, it says that there will be an absolute who is the God-man and an absolute who is a man-God.
So,
And that's who the Antichrist will be a human God. I don't want to say man because it might be a woman, but a man-God.
yeah, wouldn't that be something? A redhead besides. So my imagination is okay. So, yeah. So, can it be good? Yes, for those that choose God, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And there's a lot of bubbling up right now. There's a lot of bubbling up of new Christians. Boy, it is catching fire all over the world. It really is happening.
Well, and between the God that became man, Jesus, and the man who makes himself God,
Exactly.
the Antichrist.
Exactly. And so when you got it that way, you think about it. Wow. You got brothers in Christ. Now that's where you get, your personal relationship. brothers in Christ. That says that you have a tight bond with Christ. But if you are comrades in the Antichrist, what that means is you're like in an army just doing anything he tells you, right?
Yeah.
Comrades. It's back to the old communist,
Yeah.
comrades. And that is pardon my pun, absolutely bad. So you've got absolutely good or absolutely bad. So what the good bishop is saying at the end of the world, when this Antichrist is going to show, is going to be black and white. It's going to be deceiving to the people living because the Antichrist will do things that border on miracles. They're going to look like miracles.
Right.
They may not really be, but they're going to be. He's going to have power. He's going to be able to demonstrate it.
Yeah.
People are going to say, wow, he must be the guy. And he says, and he'll even set up, and we'll talk about this later, he'll even set up his own church. If you can imagine this. This is what we will talk about more next time. It's going to be one test, and it's not going to make it any easier to be Christian. It's going to make it harder.
I got to tell you, this is one of the best shows you've produced.
Oh, thanks.
I don't say this often enough. I should say it more often. But I hope that you take the URL of this program, and it's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's different places. But I hope you share it. Because what Steve has created here is a human way to touch the future between the man that is God, Jesus, and the God that is man, the Antichrist.
Bishop Sheen is the one that created this, not me, and I appreciate your saying that, but all I'm trying to do is explain it a little bit more to where we can understand it, because even in its raw text, I think it's impossible for a layman to understand, per se, at first anyway.
We're gonna do a good job. I think we did a good job today. Thank you very much. This is part 1. This is 3 parts. We'll have part 2 coming up next Tuesday. And give me a 10-second tease on that. What is part 2 about when it comes to this topic of the Antichrist? Am I getting ahead of you here?
No, I'm just trying to think of how to even say, because he will deceive even